to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
Thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact. They're all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. Thanks so much for tuning in. Great guest for you guys today. It's going to be Mr. Greg Norton of Husker Düe. How freaking cool is that? I'm very excited. I'm going to try to do this pre-roll thing that all the other shows do. Don't worry, you're still not going to hear ads or sponsor messages, anything like that. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. But Protonic Reversal, if it's your first time, this is a show about music and musicians and why we do what we do. You can find it in all the various ways that you find your podcasts. There's also a YouTube version of the show that's on that as well. If you like and subscribe, it helps people find it, so that's always nice. We have a new Instagram account that's just for the show, which is protonic.reversal. So if you do Instagram, what kind of... Not a cop. Please hit that up. And just continue, if you like the show, share it around, all that good stuff. You don't know if you like the show if it's your first time, but this show's been going for a long time. Archives, protonicreversal.com. And this is key, and I don't mention this nearly enough. If you like the show and you want to support it, $1 a month at Patreon, patreon.com/protonicreversal, helps the show out, and you get episodes sooner. So you get episodes of this show, this very show, but you get them sooner. That's the reward. And, we don't ever paywall anything along those lines. But it helps keep the lights on. Not to put too fine a point on it, and it's always appreciated. Okay, so I'm going to have a Husker Düe on this show, and that's pretty fantastic. I'm very excited about that. Of course, Greg's also played in Porcupine recently, the excellent band Porcupine, and we're going to talk about all that and a whole lot more with Mr. Greg Norton. But first, let's start with a song.
But I don't want you to go on me.
Don't Know If You're Lonely by Husker Düs. That's Mr. Grant Hart on the vocals. And joining us now, we have the man, myth, legend himself, Mr. Greg Norton. Greg, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. I was thinking about it this week, knowing that you were going to be on, and I would say that for me, Husker is like the in the great pantheon of like the power trio bands. Like you guys brought so much energy and personality, as well as the fantastic songs to what you're doing. But it's something that it's weird that when you think of like the traditional non-punk rock path of like rock and roll bands, like, oh, you have the lead guitar player and you got the lead singer, this and that. There was something so cool and utilitarian about the way you guys did it. Did you guys have that in mind when you first started, or was it more of a functional thing?
Yeah, I mean, we really didn't plan anything out seriously. We were just three kids that got together and started playing music. Our very first few gigs, we did basically we were a covers band with one other guy, and then but Bob Grant and I really liked playing together, so we started writing our own material, and that's basically how Husker became. So it was the first band I was in. Same with Bob.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was. We didn't really have any grand scheme or any plan, but obviously there are a lot of power trios that we've always loved, and actually you look at a lot of the bands and they're power trios. They just have a lead singer. So right. Look at the Who, they're a power trio. Roger Daltrey just happens to be out in front. Zeppelin was a power trio with
that's true.
Robert Plant. So really, guitar, bass, and drums. That's what more do you need, right?
Yeah, and a good song always helps too. And you guys, the songs,
thanks.
The songs hold up, which I think is something that one of the reasons why the band endures and lives on in the hearts of people, not just that were there, but in younger generations as well.
Uh-huh.
I think that we were talking earlier. One of the reasons why I wanted to kind of go into New Day Rising was because just one of my favorite rock and roll Freak Factor 9 moments is Robert Palmer covering that.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that bizarre?
Somebody sent it to me years ago, and I was like, "Aha, that's funny." And they're like, "No, it's for real." I'm like, "What? Really?"
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things. I discovered it kind of the same way. It's like somebody I can't remember if somebody mentioned it to me or but it wasn't until the early 2000s when I had a computer and could get on the internet and all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, this does exist. What the hell?
Did you ever know how that came to pass? How did he come to know you guys? What the?
I never really heard, and obviously he's not around to tell us the story, but I don't know how he got introduced to the song, but I think his version is kind of wild. So
it's a weirder version than I would have expected. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what I would have expected, but it wasn't that. And I'm kind of glad that I heard it the way I did, which is just almost randomly, right?
Right.
But it also kind of speaks a little bit to kind of the weird cultural cachet that Husker had. I mean, you guys grounded out and forged your own path, but made these ripples and effects down the line that you heard all the way through later generations of music, bands like Pixies, Nirvana, certainly early Foo Fighters, things along those lines. And for me, again, from a historical perspective, not being there, it's sort of it's taking the energy of hardcore, but putting melody to it and making it, but still keeping the forcefulness to it. And it seems easy, but at the time, it kind of seemed like everyone was going as far away from melody as possible, right? Everyone was just harder and faster, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, was that just what you guys were writing, or did you have a thought to hey, why don't we try this?
As the band evolved, and so did Bob and Grant evolve as songwriters. We really, we started off definitely as hey, punk rock. We love punk rock. Let's be a punk band. It's like we love the Ramones. We can play fast and hard and 3 chords and all that. But deep down, I think we were all like big, power pop fans. So, in a sense, like really, like Husker started off, I think, doing like power pop through a punk lens, which sounds funny because obviously nobody was doing that then, and it wasn't popular until like after the band broke up, and then you've got bands that's their butt. I mean, there's a whole new it's its own genre now, right? Power punk, power pop punk. We had a lot of influences, but some classical rock, and a lot of English punk bands, a lot of stuff coming out of Manchester. We really didn't dive head first and full on into the hardcore thing until we actually got out and started touring and started playing with DOA and Black Flag and the Dead Kennedys and bands like that. So, and it just kind of kept evolving, as Bob and Grant became better songwriters, and that pop nugget was always there,
right?
And it went through the hardcore filter, but it still came out as pop, so like the hardcore tunes you could whistle.
Totally. Well, and I feel like there were embers of that from the beginning, but it's sort of like it grew as the band grew, and as you mentioned, as the songwriting grew and changed, it grew as well. And I'm just thinking back to I heard a story that Land Speed record. Isn't that like, didn't you like record it for like a couple $100 or something along those lines? Like it was very just like economy of scale.
Yeah, pretty much. It's we had been out on our first national tour the summer of 1981, and we were just kind of in San Francisco, and we kept trying to line something up down in LA. Nothing was panning out, so we decided just to head home in August, and so we booked the date in the entry, and we're like, we should record this when we get home. So we just lined up a 4-track reel-to-reel, and I think the whole thing cost us like $250 to record. Not a whole lot, and then to mix it down, and we'd sent that off to SST to see if they were interested in putting it out, and Carducci didn't feel that was the most or the best introduction to Husker Dü, but Mike Watt, who we had been talking to that summer trying to get gigs down in LA, he's like, I'll put that record out. I don't even have to hear it. I'm just going to put it out. So New Alliance put the record out.
Right.
And so, yeah, definitely the whole thing was pretty econo in the truest sense of the word, and it kind of summed up the ethic of a lot of bands like us and the Minutemen and the Meat Puppets, and there was an economy to getting things done, and because the most important thing was getting out and playing the music. Does that make sense?
Well, absolutely. And it also occurs to me that especially, with the bands you mentioned, with Minutemen, Meat Puppets, etc., they all had their own take on what they were doing. And they were very true to their hearts and true to their path. But it wasn't like it was a bunch of bands that sounded like, it sounds like this band. Exactly. Like everyone had their own take on it.
Yeah. And right there, those 3 bands, that's the power trio.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean... Not to put too fine a point on it. In fact, your name came up briefly. I just talked to Mike Watt. Not for this show. He's been on the show, but I was on his show recently, and your name came up.
Watt from Pedro.
Yeah, and he said to say hello. So here's Watt's hello.
Awesome.
Now I'm trying to remember. So, and just sticking with that first record, wasn't there something like, didn't the tapes get stolen or something? And I remember heard some story like when the box set came out about this.
No, the tapes didn't necessarily get stolen. There was a second set, and that reel like disappeared. And I'm not sure if it ever actually resurfaced or if we just, used a cassette copy of the second set. But there is material on Savage Young Do that's from that same night. We came out and we kind of blasted the hometown crowd with here's what 3 months on the road.
Tour tight. Yeah.
Tour tight. And you thought we were fast before. Well, hang on to your face.
Right. So, exactly. Yeah.
And actually, I think when we got back, it shocked a lot of our hometown fans. They were like, "What the hell happened to you guys?" So, but it was, a step in the evolution. So it was something that we did and did it well and progressed through that onto other things.
Yeah, it's almost like you left as Neanderthals and came back as Cro-Magnons or something along those lines, right?
Sure. Yeah.
At least to the outside observer. I do want to speak a little bit about that box set, 'cause I think it's so meticulously put together and put together in such a way that is kind of very rewarding for the fans. It seems like a lot of work went into figuring out what went on it and presenting it in a really interesting, cool. I'm thinking of like the flyers and like the writing. It seems like that was a labor of love, I guess is what I'm driving at. Was that difficult to put together?
Well, it definitely was a labor of love, and Numero, I think was the right label to take on that project because of they put a lot of care and effort into that. I think it turned out great.
It really did. Yeah.
Really surprised at how good those recordings sound. They were just recorded on cassette tapes off a cassette deck at the soundboard. We're actually working on a new project right now, which is some early, like our first appearance at Jay's Longhorn Bar in Minneapolis, which was kind of like the punk CBGBs of Minneapolis in the late 70s, and they basically were around up through like maybe 81 or so.
Yeah.
And that was the first real club that we played. So we're putting together a record that'll have that set, and then a couple other nights documented. And just listening through to the stuff, it's amazing how, like you say, how well the stuff holds up. But I'm just like blown away by like, wow, it sounds really good. And
right.
And we're talking about it, it's like, well, it could be because it was a good sound system at the Longhorn. It was a good room to record in, and there were only like maybe 25 or 30 people there.
Right,
so,
right.
That's been a lot of fun listening to that. But this is something that it's going to be called HÜSKER DÜ Longhorn Tonight, which is taken from a flyer that we put out because we played the Longhorn a lot. So we just like made up a flyer that says, "Hey, we're playing there tonight." And then whenever we'd get a gig, we just go and hand the flyers out to people. And that'll be coming out later, hopefully by the end of the year, and on MVD. And it should be a double album. So that's a fun project.
Yeah, that's awesome. I need after all these years, I still don't have a breaking news clip. Or something like,
well, there you go.
Like
breaking,
a sound or something.
News.
But that's breaking news for the people who listen to this show. That's for sure. That sounds fantastic.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So then, and that leads me to something where I mean, I found when talking to folks and with myself also that sometimes it can be difficult when you're in it to kind of hear things as music, but a little bit of distance kind of gives you, some perspective from it, and you can kind of hear it in different ways. Have you like awesome old stuff from way back when?
Yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed listening to these shows from the early days of the Husker stuff, but it's listening to it now, listening to how it sounds, and going like, wow, you know what, this could have been something that was a band that played at CBGB's or or the Marquee in London or whatever,
Sure, any of the classic.
And listening to it kind of with a historical take and thinking back to the punk records that were coming out then, we did a really good job of the very first Longhorn gig, the band's not even maybe just over a year old at that point, maybe a little bit less. Oh no, actually no, the very first gig we would have been just a few months removed from our first shows. So,
dang.
And then the next, and then basically then we fast forward to the following summer, 1980, and that's where the next two shows come from. And the step that the band took, listening to the 79 set sounds really good. But then you listen to the 80s set and you're like, holy cow, this is the same band. They sound like so much more together and polished. And, but that's all we did back then was we played every night. We played whenever we could. We would take any gig we could get, if we weren't gigging, we were practicing. And, one of the things that you definitely hear is you hear that enthusiasm of like, hey, we're just really having a blast up here. We're doing our thing. You can do your thing. We're going to do our thing. Everybody gets a thing. It's punk rock. Let's all do our thing. And it's, there were no rules. So, in a way, it's like, okay, has music really advanced? We taken a step backwards with now with the way people record music, and it's like, well, you don't have to play the whole thing. You just play the right notes for the right amount of time, just once, and then we'll just loop that, and we can auto tune this, and we can here's a drum machine we can use, and it's like.
I think
I don't know.
I think back to I think it was I think Steve Albini said about the whole deal of like going to church and standing up when everyone else stands up and sitting down when everyone else sits down. You don't have to know all the hymns, you can just make the motions. And that's something that it seems like there's a lot of artists nowadays that are sort of, I don't know, not going through the motions, but it doesn't hit with the vibrance of like a powder keg about to explode. You know what I mean? And that's kind of
right. Yeah,
and I do see it. To be clear, I'm not trying to these kids today, they can't. I'm not doing that at all. To be clear, I'm just saying on the wider level, I think it's one of the reasons why the recordings endure, and one of the reasons why it's going to be really interesting to check out that live stuff as well.
Yeah. I think and for sure there are people that are still taking chances and doing things the way they feel the best way to do it. But there is also a lot of music that is just kind of churned out, and it's and it's like the Pro Tools has made it so everybody can have their own studio. Everybody can make things perfect. which is fine. There's a lot of fine music out there, but is it going to hold up to the test of time, or is it going to be something like in 20 years we'll listen to it and it's like, oh yeah, that's from
that's that. Yep. Remember when we were doing that year?
That's when everybody was doing that.
Yeah.
You know?
That was auto-tune was in that year, or this was in that year. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is going to seem really left field, but when did you land on what I can only call your signature facial hair?
Well, actually, so that goes back to a road story, being on the road touring. We left to do a tour in December of 82. Or maybe it was December of 81. Anyway, we took off, drove down to play Texas. We played in Texas. This was late December. Made our way out to Los Angeles, hung out in LA for a while. We might have been recording at Total Access. And then from there went up and played San Francisco and Portland, Seattle, and back down to LA. But I forgot my shave kit. So I didn't have a razor.
Right.
And so my facial hair just kept getting longer. I didn't necessarily intend on growing a mustache or a beard, but it just happened. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll just go with it, whatever. And when we were out in LA, I was talking to Des Cadena from Black Flag, and I'm like, wow, it's my mustache is kind of getting annoying because it's gotten so long now that the ends of it keep getting like in the corners of my mouth. He's like, oh, why don't you just push it up and twist them up like a handlebar mustache? I'm like, brilliant. Okay, so I started doing that, and it happened. I've got the type of hair where the mustache was like, yeah, okay, I can hang with this. I like this.
Yeah.
And so I just kept it up, and then when we got back home and I finally had a razor, I decided to keep the mustache.
It's because in my world there's you and there's Raleigh Fingers and that's about it. I guess maybe Dan Moore from the Bismarck, but it's a rare first of all, it's a rare person that can pull it off. Let's put it that way. But it's a bold look, and it was again when you're a younger person, like you tend to focus maybe on more facile things, before you engage with something. But I was like, oh wow, that guy's got a wild mustache. It was like literally the first thing I heard of when I saw a picture of you guys. Before I'd ever heard a note of the music, I'm like, all right, I'll check this out. This looks awesome. And I mean, does it require any maintenance to use mustache wax or anything? I mean, I know this is probably not what you expected to talk about, but I think it's.
I've never been like a full-on mustache wax kind of guy because I did try it once and I just thought it felt too like stiff.
Right.
So I'm just kind of use the same schmutz that I put in my hair. So
there you go. Multi-use. Yeah.
Not super high maintenance, but definitely, there are mornings where you wake up and you're like, oh, damn, I'm having a bad mustache day.
I love it. Talking about classic punk rock clubs, like historical relevance and whatnot, I seem to recall that there was a time that Huskers played with I think the Replacements at CB's, and there was something with like the opening band. I don't want to blow this if I get the details wrong.
Well, it wasn't CB's. It was actually Great Gildersleeves.
Okay.
Which is also in the Bowery. So.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Would you mind telling a little bit? I thought if I remember correctly, this is a pretty good story. Would you mind kind of telling us how that went down in the great history of punk rock?
Sure. So it's our first gig in New York, playing at Great Gildersleeves. We get it set up so that the Replacements are on the bill playing with us. And there's an opening band called The Young and the Useless. And from what I understand, I'm not sure exactly who it was, but basically the like half of that band ended up being the Beastie Boys. But this is before they, got into, the hip hop and beats and stuff like that. So they were just kind of just your average generic, hey, we're a dumb punk band type of thing. And, we played and it was an okay show. It was okay, attendance. It wasn't packed or anything like that. And at the end of the night, the replacements didn't get paid anything. And then I'm like, well, so you're not going to pay those guys? I was like, nah, we didn't really want them on the bill type of thing. But you guys did, so we put them on. And then it's like, well, what about the opening band? Did they get paid? It's like, yeah, they got $1. I'm like, you paid them $1? And he's like, no, it's $100, stupid. I'm like, oh. It's like, all right, my first experience talking New York.
Right, exactly. Got the lingo.
Guess, so,
yeah.
Yeah. So that was that. I guess I could say the Beastie Boys opened for us, but they didn't really. But it was an interesting insight into clubs. It's the only time we played Gildersleeves, but there were definitely a lot of clubs that kind of operated that way. If they didn't have to pay somebody, they wouldn't.
I hate to break it to you, but that still works that way sometimes.
Oh yeah, probably.
Which you know, I'm sure, but it's.
Yep. But I think that might also have been the same time where we John Giorno met up with us and took us over to meet William Burroughs.
Holy moly!
For the first time, and so Burroughs had a loft space in the Bowery, and there's some photos of us posing with Burroughs and John Giorno. And we went on to visit Bill Burroughs a few times in Lawrence at his home in Kansas, but that's the only time that we got together with him in New York.
A friend of mine used to run a bookstore in Lawrence, Kansas, and I guess Burroughs would come in and if I remember correctly, he would only buy copies of Guns and Ammo and Cat Fancy. Those were the two magazines that he always would pick up.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. Yeah, when we got over to his house, he's like, well, geez, I guess they don't really have any refreshments to offer you except, I guess there is a little bit of vodka and there's some warm, flat Diet Coke there if you want it. Like, I think we're good.
That's a pass, Bill Burroughs. Thank you, though.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love to picture that. That's he seemed like quite the character. Let's obviously immense talent as well, but yeah.
Right.
Tell me about, if you can, Everything Falls Apart. I think that's
it's true, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a true statement. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as I get older, I keep going like, man, that sure is right.
Do you have any thoughts about recording that record?
Yeah, I'm actually love that record. I think it's our first full-fledged studio experience. We recorded that out at Total Access with Spot. I don't know. It was just a lot of fun to record it. I think there's some such great material on it. I don't know. That record has always held a dear spot in my heart, probably because it's our first full-length studio release.
Yeah, and I think it clocks under 20 too, right? I mean, it gets in and gets out. Like there's no fat on there at all. It's just all right. Lean muscle.
Yep.
Did the well, and I think that was remastered for the box set, if I remember correctly. I mean, I think there was a few a remaster of the original. If I had it in front of me, I could tell you, but I don't.
I believe you are correct.
You mentioned, going around and just playing everywhere, all around everywhere, and doing it as the circuit was kind of being created. It was DOA, Black Flag, you guys, playing to different kinds of audiences, playing in different kinds of places, with a band called Husker Düe. There's umlauts in the name. I mean, did you get any? What? Let's put it this way: what was the craziest misinterpretation of the band name, especially in those early days, or was any of them even remotely entertaining?
Well, there was always the the Husker Düe, but so there is a story that in Bob's book that he talks about, but it's a gig that actually didn't happen. But if it would have happened, the promoter didn't. So this was something that the DOA's manager Ken Lester was trying to set up in a gig in Reno, and it would have been DOA and us, and probably 7 Seconds, and I'm not sure who else. We did end up playing a show with those guys, but in Sacramento at a different club. The Reno show never happened, but the promoter didn't ask Ken Lester to repeat the name of the band or to spell it. So initially he thought the band was called HÜSKER DÜ.
Oh man.
Yep.
Wow.
So, but anyway, I know in Bob's book, he said that, oh yeah, and then we did this gig where they called us Husker Düe, but that was actually didn't happen. But the story about the guy thinking our name was Husker Düe is true. So that part is true.
I mean, I think there's certain things that's, I always call it the Rashomon effect after that Kurosawa movie, where people view certain events differently based upon who they are and whatever. And sometimes it just makes a better story, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
Know.
Well, and by, Bob's own account, a lot of the Husker days, particularly the early ones, are a little bit hazy for Bob.
Right.
And really when Bob's book, I think the Husker chapter was kind of mostly the Michael Azerrod, our band could be your life chapter, kind of rehashed.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's one of those things where somebody told me once, it's like, oh, well, Bob wouldn't really recall for sure the exact details, and then they would make the editorial decision to just go with whatever they thought was the better story.
Never let truth get in the way of a good story.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I enjoy that book, the Our Band Could Be Your Life book, but I mean, I've heard I've had a lot of people on the show, and there's been varying shades of people's thoughts on it, including to all of it was outright lies, to that was embellishments, to that's pretty close to how it happened. So I think you take it all with a grain of salt. Right?
Obviously, I mean, he wanted to sell books, right? So I think a lot of it is not necessarily outright lies, but I think there are definitely embellishments, and I think it seemed to me that the more he could latch on that might be scandalous.
Yeah.
It was so a little bit more tabloid-esque.
I guess he was ahead of his time with that.
Needed to be.
That's what everyone's doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and that's a shame, because I think that's that era of we'll call it independent music, right? There's such a thirst for knowing more about it for the people that weren't there. I mean, even me, that's a grade level above me. That all happened and was pretty much on. Everyone was on to something else by the time I was involved in it. So I have our historical records, and then I think the listeners of the show, and there are many young listeners too, where it's the difference in time is between when you guys started and when the Beatles were a band or something, where it's like, right. Oh, that's like from a different lifetime. Okay, that's hard to grasp sometimes.
Yep.
Metal Circus, that's the one that's got. So I played It's Not Funny Anymore. and that's got Diane as well. I mean, those are both kind of scenes where Grant started to sort of bring in more of the hooks and pop, big time. With that, where were you guys at in '83 with that pre-Zen Arcade?
I think that's basically artistically and from a writing standpoint, we kind of showed that we could do the hardcore thing.
Yeah.
But we were never just a hardcore band. Like we were never just a punk band either, so the hooks and like I said, it's like, I think really, deep down, probably we always wanted to be a power pop band.
Right.
That started to come through more and plus Bob and Grant were also getting better at writing songs and they're again natural steps in the evolution,
Totally, and it was interesting that you guys were almost on this exponential growth pattern at that moment in time. Like to think that all this stuff happened in the space of a few short years. It seems like you kind of were quickly digging deeper to do what you do better, and then also trying new things at the same time.
Right.
A little bit about so I think so. First of all, I love the whole story with Zen Arcade with the Minutemen and Double Nickels. I think that's a perfect example of like music community and like kind of like the good examples of like a playful competitive nature. Like, they're doing a double album. We got to do a double album too. I think that was pretty fantastic.
Right.
Well,
what Watt told me was that that Double Nickels was just going to be a single album.
Right.
Until Carducci told him the Huskers are doing a double. So that's when they're like, well, God damn it, we're going to do a double record too. So they were like scrambling for lyrics and ideas, and so that you've got it's like Joe Carducci wrote Jesus and Tequila.
Right.
It's there's a bunch of people who contributed lyrics to that record. But this is the thing that Watt told me was that we saved the world from seeing D. Boone in his birthday suit, because the plan for the record, when it was just a single, and I can't remember what they were going to call it, but the album cover was going to basically be a naked D. Boone.
Wow, that would have been a bold move for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Well, and that's that's a perfect example of as much as the early Husker stuff is totally kick ass. Like that was sort of like you guys created your own universe with that record. And was there a thought towards like, was there a master plan, or was it just were you guys just firing all cylinders and let's go? I mean, what it's such a wild record in that way.
On Zen Arcade?
Yeah.
Zen Arcade, when we started putting that together and started writing the material and started talking about the record, it's like, the whole thing just kind of fell into place as the whole story. So we were like looking at it like we were writing a rock opera,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a story thread and arc through that whole record.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that was intentional. Yeah.
I mean, was that along the lines of like, well, the Who did it to good effect. Why don't we try what we do at that? It was an audacious. I mean, it's an audacious album today, frankly, but I mean, especially at the time, it kicked open a lot of doors in that way.
Yep. It's when we were were done tracking all the basics, and we haven't started final mix down yet. But we drove up and played in San Francisco. We stayed at with Jello Biafra, and we played the record for him. Mm-hmm. And when it all got done, Biafra goes, "Ah, yes, Husker Du, the band that brought self-indulgence back to rock and roll."
Oh, Jello. I could totally hear him say that too. That's
yeah.
There's there's a wide swath of like type of songs there on that record as well, but it also has the immediacy of, like, it doesn't sound like you guys were doing a lot of takes. It sounds like you're kind of tearing through everything too. So it's, a lot of like quote unquote, rock operas or concept records maybe like, have a tendency to get like overly precious with certain aspects of recording, and there's just not a trace of that anywhere with it. Was any of that in mind for, it's a bold thing to do. Like you're going to make the record you want to make, but it's a bold thing to do. Was there ever any thought towards overreach in that sort of catty Jello Biafra way that you mentioned?
Not really. It's there again, it's like, we get back to the economy of time and knowing that we only had so many hours booked in the studio before we had to go up and play these gigs and then come back, and we were going into the studio like at midnight. We had had the studio from like midnight until 8 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah.
And the piano happened to be in the studio, so that's some of the piano interlude stuff just happened like kind of on the spot, where it's like, hey, let's record this and work it in somewhere. But yeah, pretty much almost everything is one or two takes live for basics. I mean, Reoccuring Dreams, that was live straight to 2-track.
Oh, Jesus. And that's all like...
As it happened in the studio, there are like no overdubs on that track at all. That's just how it happened.
And that's like a 13-minute song or something, too. I mean, that's sort of like... Was there ever a, like, don't think about it too hard, don't fuck this up kind of thing?
Right.
Because it was pre-digital. I mean, this is all on tape, right? So it's like you'd have to get like inventive with the splicing, I guess. And for something like that, I don't even know if it would work, because it's all just like one big mood piece, really. In a like it's almost like a soundtrack in that way.
Oh, for sure. And that was a song that actually we had been playing live and as kind of like as an encore type thing.
Yeah.
And it always had sort of kind of an improvisational feel to it. That was my dog, Sir Jackson Hüsker Doodle, barking in the background there.
Chiming in on the thoughts on that song.
What's that?
Chiming in on the thoughts on Reoccuring Dreams.
Yes, exactly. He's like, well, this is what I think.
Didn't go down like that at all.
Right. But just how it that track turned out, and how Spot lets like the whole thing kind of just ring, and then when he just kills it and cuts it off at the end, it was like we were like, oh, that's perfect. It's like we don't need to do anything with that. And Spot's like, that's good, because I put it live to 2-track when
you wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bold ending, for a bold record. So it's sort of like I've definitely referenced that as the like, well, how do we end this? And it's like, well, you can do the Reoccuring Dreams. I've mentioned that before. So
yep.
So Huskers have entered recording shorthand in more than a couple ways. I want to, I realize we've gone all this time not talking about Porcupine. I wanted to talk about the Porcupine doing a cover of Standing by the Sea, which I thought was really cool, and how that came to pass.
Okay. So 3 years ago, I guess we're actually coming up on 4 years now, Lori Barbero
Yes.
called up and said, like, hey, Grant's got this gig at the Hook and Ladder on July 1st. And, I want to surprise him. I want to get together, like, friends and peers to come in and actually kind of do, like, a tribute to Grant and play his music. And Grant doesn't know anything about this.
Nice.
And so, she called and she asked if Porcupine would be interested in it, and I'm like, yeah, for sure. So we did. Let's see. We started off with "What Do I Want," nice. Which was a Grant cut off the "In a Free Land" single, and then let's see, what else did we play? We played Dead Set on Destruction. It's Not Funny Anymore. Standing by the Sea. Seems to me like we played 5 songs. Now I can't think of what the 5th one is. But anyway, it was just a lot of fun to learn those songs and play them. And after we had done that tribute, we Casey and Ian were like, hey, actually Standing by the Sea that's a really fun song to play. Like, let's.
Sure, yeah.
Would you like to keep it in the set? And I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be awesome. So we kept it in the set, and then when then Grant passed away that September. And when we went into record for What You've Heard Isn't Real, everybody was like, well, let's record Standing by the Sea too. So I think the Porcupine version totally rocks. I think Grant would have been very happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's something where it's there's something to be said for when can you call it a cover if it's someone that was in the band, right? But I think it's a version that's super, it's cool. It gives homage to the original without being totally slavish at the same time. It has its own vibe and its own sound. I mean, based upon the fact that it's different people playing it.
Right.
It's not like New Day Rising by Robert Palmer, of course, but
right. Well, very, very few things rise to that standard. So.
Right, exactly. That's a high standard, let's be clear.
Yeah. Although, it's Bilbo Baggins by Leonard Nimoy.
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay.
What a wild moment in history that was. They were just They were like, yep. yeah, sure. That's what you want to do? All right, let's go. Let's get high as hell and do it.
Yeah. Good times.
Okay, so let's talk about New Day Rising.
Okay.
I think New Day Rising, well, for me, it's like Ask Me on a Different Day, which one would be the favorite for what the Husker records did. But I think that is maybe a little underrated in the Pantheon. I don't know. That's my take on it. Where was the band at? Where were you at when you're doing that record? I mean, obviously, we've talked about the title track more than anything else on this show so far. But there's a bunch of books about UFOs. There's a bunch of great tunes in there, and it kind of seemed like with Zen Arcade, when you make something that audacious, there's sort of well, hell, what do we do now? Mindset that could maybe come at someone, and it didn't feel like that at all with New Day Rising.
So we were a band that was always touring the record that we were about to record
sure.
instead of touring the record that we just released. So
audiences love that.
So once Zen Arcade came out, we were already playing New Day Rising. It's just that evolution. New Day Rising was the first record that was recorded in Minneapolis. at the Nicollet Studios and also it ended up being the last record that Spot helped produce. I think Bob and Grant took a little bit more lead on the production side there.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people kind of bitch and moan about the production sound, the sound quality of the recording, and they blame it on Spot, but I don't think that's deserved. It's there's a lot of high end on that record. There's not a lot of low end, and definitely, that's something that would benefit from remastering at some point, like all the Husker records. But but as far as the material goes, it's like I think that all sorts of classics on that. Girl Who Lives on Heaven Hills, I Apologize, Folklore, Celebrated Summer, Powerline, books about UFOs. It's just so many great tunes. 59 Times the Pain. Which probably there's a deep cut, but
that is a deep cut. Yeah, I was gonna say,
yeah. But no, it's and there again, I think probably by the end of the year when we get into the studio and record Flip Your Wig, Bob and Grant there again just had grown and had learned from the production experience with New Day Rising, and Flip Your Wig ends up sounding better, Yeah. And we also recorded. So at Nicollet Studios, there was a small Studio B and a big and large studio, Studio A, and New Day Rising was recorded in the small studio, and Flip Your Wig was recorded in the big studio. I don't know how much difference that makes, but I don't know. Like I said, it's the band kept growing and kept getting better at what they were doing. So,
did you ever hear speaking of Celebrated Summer, the Anthrax version of that song? Did you ever hear that? I think it was Anthrax.
I don't know
wasn't
it? I don't think I've heard Anthrax's version of that.
Oh, okay.
Now their version of the Joe Jackson classic "Got the Time" is one of my favorites. But I'll have to look up "Celebrated Summer."
Yeah. If ever, I might be, and this could be me remembering wrong, but I remember them doing like a version of "Celebrated Summer" that sounds like Anthrax doing a version of "Celebrated Summer."
Oh, I can believe that.
Yeah.
So I knew that the drummer in Anthrax was in a Husker tribute band out in L.A. for a while.
Oh, whoa!
And I don't know if they're still around or still together, but yeah, I met the guy who played bass for them, and he was like, "Oh yeah, well it's like the drummer from Anthrax." I'm like, "What? That's great. Okay, that's cool."
Again, in weird ways, like the Husker influence comes out in weird ways sometimes, right?
Yeah.
That actually reminds me. Wasn't there that Husker? I don't know if it was a one-off, but that Husker tribute band in Chicago.
The Husker Dudes.
Yeah, yes, the Husker Dudes. That's great. How could I forget that? Jesus.
Yeah. No, those guys are great. They haven't played together in quite some time, but I actually went down there. They played a gig that happened to fall on one of my birthdays, and so basically drove down and showed up at the gig. It was like, "Hey, what's up?" Yeah, so of course my plan was just to show up and surprise them, but Toby, my wife, actually gave him a heads up that we were coming.
Yeah.
But they're super nice guys. Love them a lot. They actually came up and played a gig in St. Paul at the Turf Club.
Oh, the
Turf
Club, yeah.
After that, and yeah, they haven't done anything together in a while, but I thought they really did a great job.
Was that wild? Like just seeing these songs and these guys playing it. And obviously, it's not going to be exactly the same, but that's got to be a bizarre experience, a unique experience.
Yeah, it definitely was a unique experience, and they actually were playing stuff. I was like, damn, we never played that live.
Pulling in the deep cuts.
Yeah,
that's got to be a surreal experience, but in a good way. I mean, and that's another example of like, that the band, brought so much joy to people that like, and it's become more common now, I think, to have like, oh, it's Halloween, we're gonna do, so and so's gonna be the Wipers, so and so's gonna be, this that band. Oh, okay, cool, whatever. But when it's done with a level of dedication and love, I think it's something pretty special. And,
oh, for sure.
And
yeah.
I don't know those guys, but I think they're like, whatever, 1 degree away. And like when that happened, it was before I lived in Milwaukee. I was still living in Oakland, but I was like, wow, that's really cool. I was like, that's a good idea. that's awesome. Okay, so we haven't talked about Candy Apple Gray, which I played a couple tunes off that one. Warner Brothers.
Yep.
How was that?
Warner's actually was. It was good, and it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. We did wait to sign to a major. We started getting major labels looking at us right around the time the Zen Arcade came out, and Warner's was the most, we felt, the most sincere, and when they told us that they would let us do what we were doing because they thought what we were doing was good, was great. We we're a hard-working band, developed our own fan base, and they didn't want to mess with the formula. We weren't a band that they needed to develop. So we signing to Warner's was really good. Of course, there's always the debate. Well, should have Flip Your Wig been the first Warner's release instead of the last SST release? But that's exactly to the timing of that. I'm not exactly sure what to say there. But Candy Apple Gray was kind of a darker moment, darker album after Flip Your Wig, and a lot of people were like, wow, for a major label debut, that was kind of a what were you guys doing? But actually, it's also one of those things. Like, we signed to Warner's, and people that had followed us for a really long time were like, why did you guys sign to a major label? You're sellouts. And it's like, give me a break. We're the same band. It's like, now we just have more resources behind us. But of course, the reality is that you have less time as well, because the bigger you get, the more demand there is. People need things that people need. You need to get up in the middle of the night to do an interview with somebody in Australia. You need to, it's your free time is suddenly less and less and less because you've got more and more to do.
You spend all your time running the ship. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's
and also once we got to Warner's, that's the band had been, we managed ourselves. We were self-managed. We were working with a booking agent before that, but once you get to Warner's, like, you have to have management. You have to have a booking agent. It's like the major labels don't like to necessarily deal with artists directly, because a lot of times they think artists are flaky and don't know what they really want. So let me talk to the manager. So I guess
right, exactly, because the artists are just a bunch of idiots anyway, right? They couldn't possibly know anything about anything.
Right. So, and there again, it's So on one hand, it was you've got more demand on your time. You have, but on the flip side of that, you actually have more time though, because all the stuff that you were always doing is now being done by somebody else.
Right.
And so now you're kind of going like, well, what the hell am I doing? So it's, I don't know, it's a weird dichotomy, a weird, less is more, more is less. I don't know what I'm talking about now. So
yeah, well, there's that one's got, there's a bunch of acoustic guitar on that one, but then it's also got Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely, which is one of my favorite Grant Hart songs. I mean, that's like, a ripper by anybody's estimation, no matter what era or record it was on. Like, that song's great.
Well, Dead Set on Destruction, I think, is another really great Grant song, and Sorry Somehow.
Yeah.
Or was that on Flip Your Wig? No, that was on.
That's on Candy Apple Gray. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and it didn't sound. I mean, it is a darker sounding record, which is interesting because it isn't like Flip Your Wig is like Sunshine and Light necessarily, but it's also like of that.
Well, I don't know, the wit and the wisdom that always cheers me up.
That's a good point. That's a good point. At the time period though, it's easy to forget for people that only have been in the digital era where everything is available immediately, always at like the push of a few buttons. But just getting things in the hands in people's hands, like the distribution aspect of things, and the reaching beyond like the people that already know and love you and things along those lines. Like it seemed like, and also I was speaking to someone on the show about this, and I can't remember who it was, but just the idea of like the sellout argument, which nobody even knows what anybody's talking about when we talk about that now. Like nobody.
Oh, for sure.
Like it's like what? Like why? Huh? Sellout? What do you mean? Like it's just that's gone from like the lexicon of conversation.
Right.
But it was a big deal. Like it was something that like there was many heated columns and zines written about it and hot takes.
Right.
Pre-social media.
Well, it's like, okay, so as an artist, I want to continue to develop and grow and have my art reach more people, right? But then from the fan standpoint, they're like, well, now too many people know about you, so I don't know if you're that cool anymore.
Yeah, now it sucks. Now I don't like it anymore. Exactly.
Yeah, I was like, and you're like, what? So, yeah,
it's infuriating.
Or actually, ultimately, what happens is that as the band evolves, like Husker did, and you can find plenty of people that just go on Facebook and say like, Hand Speed Record is the greatest Husker album ever recorded. Fight me, and just watch the comments come through, or any record.
Yeah.
And the thing is that you will always have these fans that are like, at a certain point was the pinnacle for them, and that's where they want to keep you. And if you move once you start moving beyond that point, then I don't know if you're selling out or what, but at that point, then they're like, wow, you guys just aren't as good as you used to be. But isn't that the ultimate punk rock thing though, to just keep evolving? And it's
right.
Like, okay, well, do what you want to do, right? Be who you want to be.
Well, yeah, and no one could accuse you guys of not doing that. I mean, like you always followed your own compass, and that's why it must have been a little jarring on some level to have management when you guys had done such a fantastic job, managing on your own up to that point.
Yep.
It's like it's a trade-off. It's almost like a Faustian bargain in a certain way. But I'm thinking back to around that time. That's about when the Pixies first started to kick around, and I heard a story that there was one of the ads they put before they got Kim Deal, they put an ad saying bass influenced by something or other in Husker Du or something along those lines. Like they were that transparent.
Right.
about
It was looking for a bass player into Peter, Paul, and Mary and Husker Düs.
Peter, Paul, and Mary.
So this is one of those things that I don't know if this is like a complete myth or not, or if this actually ever really happened. But supposedly, somebody said to Frank Black, "It's like, well, Greg Norton's available," and he's like, "No, I want somebody that's into Husker Dü, not somebody who was in Husker Dü."
Whoa!
So, but like I don't know if that's true or not, but it's one of those things like where you hear the story and you laugh and.
Damn.
Like, huh.
Yeah, it's almost like, do you want it to be true or not?
Well,
I mean, either way, yeah.
I like Peter, Paul, and Mary too.
Yeah, exactly. I can play that stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy crap! That would be wow. Talk about like a alternate universe kind of thing. That would have been a very different scenario for sure for those guys as much as anything. But then again, you got to think about the fact that they also. Post Kim Deal on the comeback, they kicked Kim Shattuck out of the band basically for being too boisterous of a personality. Like she played like one show and I think she stage dived or something and they canned her. So it's like, all right, guys, I don't know. No, I'm saying, so there goes the Pixies. Any of them ever coming on the show except for Kim Deal apparently, but I don't know. I think that tells you a lot about those guys to a certain degree. Right.
Well, I actually have only seen the Pixies play once. It was at the down in Chicago, and the reason I saw him was my friends, the Bad Plus, the jazz trio, opened for him.
Oh wow! Okay.
And this was on one of their first comeback tours, and saw the show, thought it was really good. I'd listened to all their records and liked the records a lot, and then after the show somebody was like, well, so first time seeing the Pixies, what'd you think? And I'm like, yeah, they're a really great studio band.
You know what, man, that was exactly my thoughts as well.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, those records are really good. That was okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but live, I mean, okay, all right.
Well, and the thought also occurred to me. It was like, if Kim Deal wasn't here, I don't think I would care. And then, whatever, a little further down the line, squeezing money out of the of the thing, they Kim's like, I think I've had enough. I'm like, all right, so have I. not interested.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only person that feels that way, by the way, because I feel like it's mean to feel that way, but it wasn't a very compelling show. It was fine. That's fine,
Right. No, and I still love the Pixies. I love listening to those records.
Exactly. Any day.
After seeing one of their shows, I'm like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah, you never need to see them again. It's like, I saw that.
Yep. Yep. I just put the record on and just put a photo of them playing live, up on the TV, and it'd be like the same experience.
Damn. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Okay, let's we've gone through all the rest of them. I guess we should talk about Warehouse Songs and Stories also.
Okay. So yeah, Warehouse, another double LP, which and there again, definitely a lot of people are like, it would have made a really great single album.
They say most people say that about any double album, though.
Well, that's true, but it's funny because you fast forward, a decade later, and CDs are out, and everybody is like, "Oh, what, your CD? Like, you just put out a CD and it's only 45 minutes long? Like, what are you, lazy?"
Yeah,
it's
you got 40 more minutes of music you can throw on there.
Yeah. So. There again, I think there are a lot of great classic tunes on there. These Important Years and
Ice Cold Ice
is such a standout. But in a way, I had just basically kind of gotten back into writing, I was okay with being the third best songwriter in the band. I was totally fine with that. As putting a lot of effort into it, and then it's like, oh you got a song. It reminds me of reading an interview with George Harrison where he's like, there was John and Paul, and granted they were, Lennon and McCartney, they were the main songwriters, but he's like, I put a lot of effort into My Guitar Gently Weeps. I thought it was a really great fucking song, and they basically gave it like 1 or 2 takes, So on one standpoint, it's like I can totally relate to that. It's like, okay, I know I'm not the primary songwriter, but in a sense, I guess the Bob and Grant had already kind of started the breakup, so to say, between and material wise and stuff. So I don't know. It's a good record. Of course, obviously when we were recording it, I didn't know that the band, nobody knew that the band was going to be done for within a year or so. I don't know. I don't know if I want to go on too much more.
No. You don't need to. But I think there's some cool stuff in that. Like I said, I mentioned Ice Cold Ice, and I think that and that always, I think it's a great song because it's got that, it's got that back and forth, like it makes no sense at all. And then I like it because have the fade out, and then it just hits with that last chord. Like it's a bratty thing to do, but I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's
well.
really cool.
We were convinced that was going to be the song of the summer.
It rips. Why wouldn't it?
I know, right? Well, playing that on commercial radio back in 1987.
Yeah, a little too early, I guess. I don't know. I guess. Well, 91 would have been when that kind of those doors opened for a brief moment, right?
Yep.
Could you, wild left field turn, but I feel disingenuous if I didn't ask after it. You were running that restaurant in Red Wing for a while. Was that a good experience for you? I mean, my understanding is you're not doing that anymore, but
right. Actually, yeah, I got back into working in restaurants after the band broke up, and a couple of years after the band was done, I met Lenny Russo, who is one of my best friends, and he's actually one of the top chefs in the U.S. I mean, the guy's been nominated for James Beard Awards numerous times, and I was working in a restaurant where he was the chef, and he kind of talked me into the back of the house, and I just started learning how to cook and really kind of took to it. So I kind of owe that path in my life to Lenny. I really enjoyed, working, doing the restaurant thing. I don't miss it. I don't miss the hours or the physical demand of the job, but you miss customers, you miss regulars, you miss camaraderie and things like that. But I really enjoyed that part of my life. But I did go, while I was becoming a chef and learning how to be a chef, I went 14 years without picking up a bass. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, there's some good some folks saying Patrick Carver, a friend of the show, saying they used to take his dad to go eat at the restaurant all the time, and he really loved it. It was a great experience for them.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, and that's a move. There's a few people like Mario Lawley did it from Fatso Jetson, and I can't think of. Yawning Man? Yeah. Is it Yawning Man? I think so. Anyway, he's got a really good restaurant, but it's running a restaurant's hard. I mean,
for sure.
I guess I don't need to tell you about it, but it's running a restaurant's very difficult.
Right. And you're working on like, razor thin margins and people see like, oh, the place is busy. You just must be like making tons of money. It's like, no.
Oh yeah, we're minting
really.
it back here. Yeah,
I'm working a lot. Yep. I'm glad everybody's happy.
Yeah, it's. I'm enjoying the work. That's the way you can put that. Yeah. So and then. So you weren't really playing bass for a long period of time, and then you took up. I think you were playing with an instrumental group for a bit, right? Somewhat.
Right. So Gang Font, which is a band. So I mentioned the Bad Plus earlier. So Dave King is the drummer in the Bad Plus, and when I first met him, it was at a show. I just wanted to introduce myself to him because they had just put a record out on Sony and did an interview in the local paper here in Minneapolis where they mentioned that Husker Dü was one of their influences. Oh. And I had heard the record and I liked it a lot. And that was the record where they covered or did a jazz version of Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Yeah, I totally remember that.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I met Dave for the first time, and he's like, "Hey, I've got like this crazy idea for this band, and I think you would be the perfect bass player for it." And from him saying that, it literally took 2 years before we actually ever got together to play music. But once we did, it came together really quick. We recorded and released a record, and so we recorded in 2006 and released the record in 2007, I believe. Did a few shows, played a show at the Knitting Factory in New York where there were like 23 people paid. And then later everybody said like, oh, well, they had the time wrong in the newspaper and that's why we didn't show up. It's like, whatever.
Okay.
Welcome back to New York. This is awesome.
Exactly.
So, but anyway, then we actually have a second record recorded that we recorded 10 years ago.
Oh, really?
Actually, no, 11 years ago. And eventually, hopefully, we'll find somebody that wants to release that and put that out. But I've been saying that we've been aging it like a fine wine. And at this point, it's definitely a Grand Reserva. So it's and I think it's almost ready for consumption. So we'll see. It's one of those things where I had to keep it under wraps because the world wasn't quite ready for it yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, there's people that run record labels that listen to this show, so maybe they can get their wine openers ready. Get down
there you go. Yep.
I don't know how much you want to speak on it, but I do like Porcupine quite a bit, and I was interested in what the future of that is. I mean, you mentioned privately that there might not be that much of a future.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how things kind of worked out with the pandemic. It's
God, that's the first time we've talked about it, huh? Jesus.
Oh yeah. Hey, did you realize that there was a pandemic going on?
Oh yeah, I noticed.
Thanks, I like to sit. I'm kind of a homebody, so I didn't really notice, but no, seriously. I had been in wine sales for about a decade, and December of 2019, I got a job. I work at a flour mill now. I work a job that actually I'm surprised by how much I like it, but so being gainfully employed through the pandemic has been kind of a blessing for sure. But Porcupine, we played our last show at the Big Turn Music Fest in Red Wing of February of 2020.
Oh man, right before it all went down. Okay, wow.
Right, and then basically 3 weeks later, everything got shut down. We had planned on taking a break, not really sure what the future held for Porcupine, and I think that's basically where we're still at. So, in a way, we, it's not like we had to cancel any shows or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I guess as far as the pandemic goes, I actually kind of lucked out. I ended up with a good job and didn't have to worry about canceling any gigs. But so I'm not really sure where what's going to be in my future as far as like music goes right now. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Got like this new Husker project going on. I think
sounds rad.
That record is actually, I think it sounds really great, and I think is going to do well. And I'm planning on making the cover art for this be the T-shirt design that replaces all of those Ramones T-shirts out there.
Interesting. Okay, I'm
sure.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued.
Well, everybody's got a Ramones T-shirt. They don't even know what the fuck a Ramone is. I don't know. I got this T-shirt at Target.
I just like the looks of it. There's so many homage, parody, like whatever versions of it too that it's I don't know. It's iconic, but it's also been diluted in its way. And I say that as them being one of my favorite bands too. Like whatever. It's a fashion accessory now. Sure. Okay. Fine. Why not? There's worse things to be into. The SST records. Any chances of those being reissued?
Well, that's an open-ended question for sure.
Yeah, sorry, it's a tough one.
And probably one. I'm not going to comment on.
Okay, fair enough. Don't get yourself in trouble.
Because I don't want anybody in Texas to misinterpret any of my words.
Understood.
Yeah.
There's. I will put it this way. There's certainly an interest out there. And I think you probably know that, but
I know that for
okay,
sure.
Okay,
yeah.
right on. I just wanted to I feel like it'd be disingenuous for me not to say it. Is
right on.
Basically why. Man, this Greg. This has been so great. Thanks so much for doing it. It's been great spending so much time with you. Thank you for being so open and cool and telling these awesome stories. I only have one question I ever ask people, and I ask at the end. You can choose to interpret it however you like. However you want to interpret it, you can. Why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Well, sometimes I wonder what the hell am I doing? But mostly I do what I do because it brings me joy, and I want to keep doing things that bring me joy. Right now, my family brings me immense joy. My dogs bring me joy. My job brings me joy. Eventually, I'm sure I'll get back up on a stage. That will bring me joy as well. But, and actually with Hüsker Düs, we always said, how people would go like, well, how long are you going to do this for? And the answer was always until it's not fun anymore. And anything, it's like if it's not bringing you joy, if it's not making you happy, then maybe you should look at doing something different.
It sounds so easy when you say it like that, but
right? There you go.
Greg Norton, thank you so much.
There you go.
Man.
Take 2 Prozac and then call me in the morning.
Right. Greg, thank you so much, man. This has been a pleasure. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, Conan, thanks. It's been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate it.
Take care, man.
Yep, cheers.
There he goes. Greg Norton. What a cool guy. Let's listen to Ice Cold Ice. for it. I love it. Oh, so great. Something I learned today by the Husker Dudes. What a great cover band name. That's amazing. And, before that, Ice Cold Ice. As evidenced by me talking about the Ice Cold Ice thing. I may have actually talked about that recently, too. We'll see.
Can you hear me now?
Hey, that was great. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was Mr. Greg Norton. Hüsker Dü. What a cool guy. I'd like to thank him for spending so much time with me and all of us. Hope you enjoyed that. As for me, name of this show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Baby. This show airs live. Radio Nope. RadioNope.com. Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Archives, ProtonicReversal.com. Everything. Archived. Always.
As we come to the close of our broadcast day.
No ads, no sponsors, no kidding.
This is my farewell transmission.
If you like the show and want to support it and or get episodes of the show sooner,
Signing off.
Patreon.com/ProtonicReversal.
Mr. and Mrs. America, all ships at sea.
$1 a month will get you there.
Anyone within the sound of my voice.
Instagram, Protonic.Reversal. Facebook, Protonic Reversal Show. Twitter is still just me, Conan Neutron.
I've got 50,000 watts of power.
If you're on YouTube, the show has a YouTube page. Sometimes there's video. Subscribe to it if that's a thing that interests you. If not, don't worry about it. Creeping up on episode 50. It's 50. 250. Oh, Hugo Burnham, Gang of Four next week.
Microphone
Stay tuned.
turns sound into electricity.
And stay safe out there.
Can you hear me now?
Most importantly,
Out on Route 128, you're dark and lonely.
take it easy.
I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency,